You ever look around at your job, or at the government, or just the world, and wonder why so many people seem to be so bad at their jobs? It's a feeling we've all had, right? Well, it turns out there might be a scientific explanation for it, and that's exactly what we're going to break down right now.
And that feeling? Yeah, it is not new. This line comes from way back in 1969, from a book that tried to get to the bottom of this exact problem. It just nails that universal frustration, that feeling that incompetence isn't just some random fluke, it's somehow the main event.
And the evidence is just everywhere. I mean, the author lists these examples that would be funny if they weren't so alarming. We're talking about massive bridges collapsing, giant cooling towers that couldn't handle a strong breeze, and appliance companies that literally expect their brand new products to break. It's a problem that cuts across all of time and every industry you can think of.
So this brings us to the big mystery. Are we all just wired to mess things up? Or is there some kind of hidden rule, a system working behind the scenes that actually creates and promotes incompetence?
Well, a scientist by the name of Dr. Lawrence J. Peter was so bothered by this question that he made it his life's work to study it. And after looking at hundreds and hundreds of real-world cases, he was convinced he had found a fundamental law that governs pretty much every organization on the planet.
And this is it. This is what he found. It's simple, it's profound, and honestly, it's a little terrifying. It's called the Peter Principle. And the core idea is that the very system we use to reward good work, promotion, is the same system that guarantees people will eventually end up in jobs they just can't do.
Okay, to see how this works in practice, let's look at a classic case study from the book. Meet a guy named E. Tinker. At the bottom of the ladder, this guy is a total rock star. As a mechanic, he's smart, he's passionate, a master of his craft. He is the absolute definition of competent.
So naturally, what happens? He gets promoted. But now, as foreman, the very things that made him a great mechanic become his biggest weaknesses. He can't let go, he meddles in every single repair, and he doesn't get that customers just want their cars back on time, not perfect. A competent mechanic has just become an incompetent foreman, and according to the principle, he has now reached his final resting place.
And this little flowchart here just shows how logical that downward spiral really is. So you're good at your job, right? That makes you a candidate for promotion. You get promoted to a new, different role. If you're good at that, guess what? You get promoted again. This whole process just keeps repeating until, inevitably, you land in a position that requires skills you simply don't have. And that becomes your final destination, your level of incompetence.
This leads us to the ultimate and kind of chilling conclusion of the principle. If this process plays out for everyone, then given enough time and enough promotions, every single job in an organization will eventually be filled by someone who is not competent to do it. It's a pretty wild thought, isn't it? Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Come on, there have to be exceptions, right? What about the people who get promoted even though they're already terrible? Or the ones who climb the ladder just by being sticklers for the rules? Well, Dr. Peter had answers for those too.
We've all seen this one, haven't we? The employee who is a complete disaster. So management gives them some fancy new title and a corner office just to get them away from the actual work. Surely that's a promotion based on incompetence, right?
Peter had a fantastic name for this: percussive sublimation. It looks like a promotion, it sounds like a promotion, but it's really just an illusion. The key here is that the employee hasn't moved up from a level of competence, they've just been shifted from one incompetent position to another. It's a sideways shuffle disguised as a step up, all to hide a problem.
At the end of the day, it's just a maneuver to hide the fact that management made a mistake, while keeping that employee from mucking up the real work. So it doesn't actually violate the principle at all. In fact, it kind of proves how desperately hierarchies will try to hide the incompetence they've created.
Okay, so what about the other classic type? The bureaucrat. The one who's obsessed with forms and procedures, but doesn't actually seem to care about getting results. How do those people keep moving up?
This is explained by a really fascinating concept called Peter's inversion. This is what happens when a hierarchy gets so twisted that it starts valuing the process more than the outcome. In these systems, following the rules becomes way more important than actually achieving the goal.
And here's why that matters so much. Competence is in the eye of the beholder. See, a competent manager judges you on your output, the results you get. But a manager who has already reached their own level of incompetence, well, they can't really judge results.
So instead, they judge by input, how neatly your forms are filled out, if you're on time, if you follow every single rule to the letter. In that upside-down world, the best rule follower suddenly looks like the most competent person for the next promotion.
So if every position is eventually filled by an incompetent person, this raises a pretty terrifying question. How does anything get done? At all? Who's keeping the lights on?
And here is the simple and absolutely stunning answer. All the useful work in the world is being done by people who are still on their way up the ladder. The people who are still competent in their current roles, just waiting for that next fateful promotion.
If you visualize any organization, it's not just a pyramid, it's a whole distribution of ability. Most people fall somewhere in the middle. But the really interesting part is what happens at the extreme ends of the curve, the super incompetent on one side and the super competent on the other. Because what happens to them is the final shocking twist in this whole story.
This is where we get to the final shocking twist, which Dr. Peter called hierarchical exfoliation. This is the tendency for organizations to get rid of employees from both extremes. Now, it makes perfect sense that they'd fire the super incompetent. But, and this is the incredible part, they often get rid of the super competent too.
Why on earth would you fire your best people? It sounds crazy, right? Well, it's because super competence is a threat. A super competent employee gets things done too fast, they break outdated rules, and worst of all, their amazing results make their incompetent bosses look bad. The #1 rule of any hierarchy is to preserve itself, and true excellence is a disruption it just can't handle.
So the system purges anyone who is too good and anyone who is too bad. And what this does is preserve a state of, well, comfortable mediocrity. It leaves the vast majority of employees in the middle to continue their steady, predictable climb toward their own personal level of incompetence.
And all of this leaves us with a final, unavoidable question. Looking at your own career, where are you on this ladder? Are you one of the people still competently getting the real work done? Or have you already had that one promotion too many?